a world focused on the individual, this podcast aims to shine a light on the remarkable spirit of humanity. We're dedicated to bringing you the inspiring conversations with exceptional organizations and individuals devoted to creating a better world. Welcome to the Lighthouse Keepers Podcast.
I wish you didn't exist, sir.
Unfortunately, there is a need for us, and every member feels that same emotion as well. And she read my cut and just started to cry. And she was going through, that situation with an ex. Her son was being abused.
I have to imagine that's what the Brotherhood is for.
We don't know what extent the abuse, what type of abuse it was. A lot of situations, these kids talk to us and tell us what it is. The fact that there's monsters roaming this world, I think it's okay to steal that innocence from, a 2, 3, 4-year-old. It's disgusting. A lot of child abuse doesn't even get reported. They're telling the story 100 times over, and it doesn't get easier.
Be a kid again.
So the complete opposite happened. They do more for me than I could do for them.
Welcome back to the Lighthouse Keepers Podcast. I'm your host, Mary Ellen Sherlock, and today is a very special day. In the Lighthouse Keepers Podcast, one of the things we try to focus on is seemingly ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And it is my pleasure to introduce my guest today, Upriser.
Thank you.
Upriser is from Bikers Against Child Abuse. And I want to make sure to everybody on this that is listening today, what these amazing individuals are doing is worth your time. So please, let's introduce Upriser to tell us about this program. And I mean this with my heartfelt sincerity. I wish you didn't exist, sir.
Unfortunately, there is a need for us, and every member feels that same emotion as well, that we all love being together and spending time together, but we wish we could do that for a different reason.
Yes.
And thank you for having us.
Of course. No, thanks for being here. So one of the things that we talked about before starting the podcast is how to call you, because that is your biker name.
Right.
There's an anonymity that comes with each. Can you tell us a little bit about why that is, just within the biker community and then widely with this organization?
Again, a lot of, and we're an organization, we're not considered a motorcycle club. We do need to keep that term in there to keep our 501c3 status. It's something that's popular amongst the motorcycle community and just always has been. Our case, again, it's mainly used for anonymity, to protect our members. All the kids that we bring into the organization get road names as well. And again, that's to protect them. It goes as far as, it's a corporate-like setting. We have a monthly meeting where there's a president's report, PR, and even in our minutes, we don't mention the kids' names. Again, it's all about the protection of the kids that are involved in our organization.
Right. I think do you agree, or would you say, yeah, Mary Ellen, there's been a stigma about what a biker community is, or people have a different ideology of what that is. That's completely false and needs to be debunked. And the platform that you're working in, it has some similarities to the kids enjoy the toughness and the strength and the unity that also is part of the characteristics of that. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Again, there's just that people's mindset of when they see bikers together. We've been at events, we do a lot of awareness events where, unless you come up, you don't see our tent and what it says, Bikers Against Child Abuse. We've actually seen families walking towards us and then cross the street.
No kidding.
I'm one of the cute ones in the organization. We have some big bikers that are tattooed from their neck down to their toes, and they're intimidating looking, but that's what we need.
That's sort of right. That's a special sauce in the program.
And it is, again, through television, through documentaries, all the movies that have been out. Bikers do get a bad rap. I've been involved with this organization going on 7 years, and bikers are some of the most charitable people I've ever dealt with. If you see a group of bikers riding together, it's usually for a cause, whether it's for a family that lost a parent, child going through. We actually just had one where a girl was hit by a drunk driver and lost her leg. We've ridden with Gabby Petito's grandmother, put a ride together. There's a lot of law enforcement, military clubs that, are just out in the community doing good things.
I know we've seen in the communities we've lived in, there was a big program for 9/11 for many years.
That happens every year. Yeah, they do it.
And
it's a ride for Richie that usually starts in Queens, goes through the Trade Center, and then ends in Brooklyn. And I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars raised for these causes. So, majority of the people out there are doing the right thing.
Let me ask you a question. Were you in the organization for BACA as a biker, or did you become a biker and then got into BACA? What's the chicken and egg story?
I've kind of ridden since I was a kid. I bought my first motorcycle. I'm dating myself back in the 70s. It was actually my first means of transportation. And basically, I was looking for a group of people to ride with. I was never in the military, so you can get into a military organization, but I never felt right about that. And basically just came across a YouTube video, about this organization. I watched it late on a Friday night. I couldn't wait to call, the first chance I got to, try and get involved. And, that's where it took off from there.
Do you consider it a brotherhood?
Absolutely. It is absolutely, and a sisterhood in our situation, because we do have women in the organization. And that's where a lot of the empowerment for these children comes in, is that it's evident when bikers are together. Right. I mean, I don't know if you've ever driven and see two motorcycles pass in the opposite direction and, they put two fingers out. That's basically two people that don't know each other,
but there's a
saying
code,
to be
there's
safe.
Exactly.
And that, again, these kids, the minute we pull up, we'll get into it, I'm sure, at level 1, where it's basically an adoption for the children that we bring in. And they usually start out, especially with the younger kids, they'll be wrapped around the parent's leg, not knowing what to expect. And by the time we leave, complete 180. I mean, the kids just gravitate and now are part of that family. And that's where that empowerment comes in.
I'll be honest with you. Sometimes there are many of us, and I'm sure some of the things that you've known and that you've seen, people cannot fathom.
Right.
Especially to these little vulnerable children. And I think you mentioned the age of a child you were dealing with was 8.
Yeah, and younger than that. We'll take children in at the age of 3 to 18. Anything younger than that, the organization has found is it really doesn't benefit the child at that age. We do have situations where we'll take in a sibling that might be older, and once that child reaches the age, then we'll present them with their own cut, give them a road name. They're assigned 2 primaries that are 2 patched members that child has access to 24/7. So it works in that regard.
I just want to tell our viewers and our listeners, this program started in 1995. It is in the majority of all the states in the United States, and it is an international program.
Yes.
And the reason why I feel a little bit, disappointed in myself is I didn't know about it. Yeah. But that's also somewhat by design. Is that right? It
is. And, we are trying every day out there trying to bring awareness. Unfortunately, it's not a conventional way to treat, therapists, people that are in the situation that, are victims of abuse. It's not the first thing on their mind saying, let me look out for a bunch of bikers that could help me. But again, that's what we try and do every day. We're constantly doing awareness events. We met at the Imagine Awards
and I was
year.
Just in awe. Yeah. Just in awe of everything you've done.
And it was funny because it was a black, people
all dressed up in suits and ties. And,
it was discussed in one of the meetings, how do we want to go? And we're like, we're bikers. Let's just go the way we, and, we pulled up, parked right in the parking lot. I think there were 13 bikes out there and, cuts and jeans. And it drew a lot of attention. We made a lot of great contacts that night.
Yes, it's fantastic.
That continue. And I mean, you're one of them.
Yes, exactly.
And again, it's about the awareness. We want to get it to a situation where, people are, well, we never heard of you. We never knew you existed, to the point where, oh, it's you guys again.
Right. Yeah.
We just want people out there that, are in need, that have gone through any type of abuse to know that this is an option for them.
And that's usually how you get involved through there's different portals, right. Whether it's therapists or even the legal system or family and children's services and a variety of other people.
Yeah, they
know about
it comes through all different avenues. We deal with state and local agencies, CPS. We had a judge in the family courts that, heard about us and started referring kids. And it was funny, one day I was actually just having lunch with my son. I had my bike, we were sitting by a window, and I noticed a mom and about 5 or 6 year old boy, they were looking at the bike, and I could see the mom pointing. And just happened that when I was leaving, they were coming back, and, she's like, oh, my son loves it. I was like, he could sit on it. And she read my cut and just started to cry. And she was going through, that situation with an ex. Her son was being abused and came into the organization. So, again, it's all different.
It has to be a very, I'm sure that you've heard stories. I realize my capacity, what I'm able to do for this child is not what I want to do.
Right.
You want to help this little defensive pickle. How do you deal with that? Like, how do you, I have to imagine that's what the Brotherhood is for.
Yeah, it again, and we don't claim, we're not therapists, we're not psychologists.
Yes.
Again, when we go into the situation, we don't know what extent the abuse, what type of abuse it was.
Okay.
A lot of situations, these kids talk to us and tell us what it is. And, we listen and we just, if it's, again, out of our realm of what we do, we'll say, talk to mom, and 90% of the kids we deal with are in therapy. We'll say, maybe that's something you should speak to your therapist about.
Yes.
Again, we've had situations where you see the impact that we have on these kids, and it's out of my understanding, but if you go to our website at BACAworld.org, there is a clinical study, that what we do, it works.
Provides.
Yeah.
There's this wonderful saying that not everything that counts can be counted.
Right.
And in this organization where in the anonymity, the goal is we're not doing it for the metrics.
Right.
We don't feel we have to prove anything. Our success stories are with the children. And I think you were just mentioning to us, each one of the kids gets to pick their name.
Right. So
this is really cool.
The way it works, again, once we're contacted, every chapter has a child liaison. That child liaison will go and meet with the family along with 2 to 3 other members. We explain to them what we do. There is a 7-minute video at BACAworld.org. That's our international video that really gets into detail of what we do. If the family thinks it's a fit, then we move to the next step. If not, we walk away and wish them the best. And again, that it's all about empowerment. First step is the child gets a cut. They get to pick their own road name, which, we've said before, it's usually something powerful.
Right.
We get Venom, Beast, Boss, I love it. It runs the full gamut. Once that level, interaction takes place, we set up what we call a level 1. Level 1 is basically an adoption ceremony for that child to bring them into our organization. So it's a mandatory ride for our supporters and our full patch members. We go to the child's house or a place where the child feels safe. We've done them at parks and basically bring the child in. They're assigned 2 primaries that are 2 full patch members. So at the ceremony, we give the child a cut. Prior to presenting them the cut, every member signs the inside back, and we just let them know that every member now has their back. After they meet their primaries, then the rest of the chapter will introduce themselves and basically do whatever the kids want.
They're part of the family.
And the one thing, everything on our patch stands for something, and the chain is for unity, that we're one BACA. We've had situations where members from Connecticut have come down. We've gone there, Rhode Island, Staten Island. We have 7 chapters in New York that often will participate. And then again, we hang around for an hour.
Right.
So these kids see 30 bikes pulling down a street. By the end of the level 1, even as young as 4 years old, these kids know how to get on every bike, start it up. They rev them. You'll get the looks from the neighbors seeing like kind of what's going on. And then, 20 minutes later, you see 8 bikers playing duck, duck, goose on a front lawn. So, we do whatever they want. I mean,
exactly.
You've seen some big guys walk out with with nail polish, their beards braided. I mean, it's a fun day for the kids.
Right. But I think the children identify with somebody that's the unity of that team. That's much different than anything that they've experienced in their life.
It definitely is.
One of the things that we talked about, it's easier now for people even not in a family. So, when their abuse is happening or bullying or things like that, it's easier for people now with social media to find some of these children.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. And again, Facebook and social media would help us out incredibly.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to post anything.
Right.
I mean, we have an international committee that if we even want to put a flyer out on Facebook for a fundraiser, it has to go to them for approval.
Right.
And we let the families know as well. Please don't post, anything on any type of social media, just to keep our anonymity and the same for the kids.
Because that is, a lot of people don't want their children on social media. You never know where it's going.
Yeah.
I'm not here to bash AI, but obviously that's another thing that people have some level of concern about. if there were people like myself, if we wanted to help a program, like how do you do that when you don't really know how to find them? Like you said, hey Marilyn, you know what? Can you tell all your Lighthouse Keeper podcast people, this is what we need. If it's not money, it's advocacy, it's knowledge, it's maybe I need to go in and talk to schools, or what is the best way for people who believe in what you do to support you?
Again, that website at BACAworld.org, it'll list every chapter throughout the country and basically international as well.
Right.
There's a hotline number on there that if people, we have a great group of therapists that work with some of our kids. Unfortunately, there's situations where families can't afford therapy. We pay for that. That's where, all our members are strictly volunteer. Whatever fundraising we do goes 100% of that goes to the kids. We don't take money for anything. Again, there's families that are in need that can't afford therapy, need it. Some of these kids are going through, you can't explain, even, you don't want to think about it.
You don't. That's what I'm saying. I think there's, sometimes when there's tragic stuff out there, it's easier to change the channel.
Right.
And when I think about what you guys do, and sometimes hearing these just, soul-crushing stories about what these kids have gone through, you think to yourself, no mas, I can't do anymore. And yet, it almost sounds like your commitment gets stronger.
It does, and again, it's difficult. We do have a therapist that deals with our members, because it gets tough. We had a situation, it was a family of 5 kids that were abused by the father, every type of abuse. We went, it was out in Riverhead for the child's impact statement, and we didn't, but the judge, every court officer was in tears. When one of the children attempted suicide 3 times because of that abuse. Again, so getting back to your question, go to that website. If you're a therapist and can offer help, if you're someone in the business world who could help us, we're not looking for handouts, but knows their ways around grants or how to go to some of these Fortune 500 companies who donate every year.
Right.
Again, it's a great cause that just not many people know about.
In one of our when we started to come up with this podcast and the name, the Lighthouse Keepers Podcast, we talk about a lighthouse as a beacon of light.
Right. And
I think one of the analogies is that the lighthouse is most needed in the stormiest of times, and that lighthouse keeper doesn't say, "Ooh, it's kind of raining and snowing out there. I think I'm going to go home," and the person that is needed is when it's the darkest time.
Right, exactly.
You are such an inspiration to people, myself, first and foremost. Who inspires you?
These kids. Again, I have 2 sons that, they're grown now, but I remember looking at them at 2, 3, 4, 5 years old and just being in amazement that these kids don't have a care in the world.
They don't.
The pure innocence at that age is just, and the fact that there's monsters roaming this world that think it's okay to steal that innocence from, a 2, 3, 4-year-old, it's disgusting.
Right.
And again, when I was, so basically what happens is you're a supporter before you become a full member. And when I put my time in as a supporter, one of the members asked me, well, why do you want to do this? And I said, you know what, it'd be nice to make a difference. My kids were older, I had some time now. I'm like, it would be nice to make a difference in a kid's, in a kid's world. And complete opposite happened. These kids have made such an impact on me that, when you see a 7-year-old go up on a stand and testify against their perpetrator, the strength, it just blows you away.
Right.
It's more, they do more for me than I could ever do for them.
There's a book by a gentleman named Joseph Campbell, and he wrote a book about the hero's journey. And most people don't start out being a hero.
Right.
But apparently you're here now.
Yeah. Well,
I think everybody
believe it or not, that's how we refer to our kids, that heroes.
And I would say that about you.
Yeah. When we visit with a kid, when we have to write something up, call them a hero.
Yeah.
Again, it's just mind blowing that the strength and you see that some of these kids possess, that they don't know about it, and then that's what we're there for, to try and help them.
Right. And the stigma to say it's okay we're here to support you.
Yeah.
What happened to you wasn't right.
Right.
But we're here to to get you back to
Exactly.
rights.
And one of the things that we do, we hold parties for the kids 2 to 3 times a year. It's nice that when these kids get together, they realize that,
Right.
you'll see them talking together,
Yes.
to realize they're not alone in what they're dealing with. Because, it's sad that a lot of child abuse doesn't even get reported. Parents will
Sweep it under
the
table.
rug. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a situation where we had a parent that didn't want us involved because she didn't want anything being brought out about what happened to a child. And that's what's sad. I mean, the first step for these kids to healing is
the advocacy to
right,
making
yeah,
sure that
to get
they're
through
not-
it. And you think about, a kid that's gone through anything has had to tell a parent, had to tell a family member, talk to the police, talk to a DA. They're telling the story 100 times over, and it doesn't get easier.
No.
They just want to, again, get on with their lives.
Be a
and
kid again.
Some type of
Be a
normalcy.
kid.
Yep.
Upriser, I cannot thank you enough for being on this program.
Thanks again for
I hope
having
that
us.
I can have more of you, more of an opportunity. I know I totally respect the anonymity, but the most important part about today was to be able to get the story out. It's not it's not always feel good story in terms of how they got there
Right.
or why you have to do what you do, but the feel good story is the impact that you and your brotherhood are making. And for that, on behalf of all of us here in this program, thank you for
Thank you
your
again for having
service.
us.
Thank you for
thank you.
doing this. Until next time, Lighthouse Keepers Podcast, keep shining your light.